1968 Winter Olympics in the French resort of Grenoble, doing the best she could meant winning gold and silver medals. And with that success, Nancy Greene became a household name across Canada and throughout the skiing world. Over the years, thousands and thousands of young Canadians have learned the joys of Canada's winter pastime, with the name Nancy Greene proudly stitched on their racing bibs. And for the many Canadian skiing champions who have followed Nancy down those icy slopes, she remains their role model and inspiration.
Well, Nancy was really, for I think a whole generation of us, someone who proved right at a time, and a very important time I think in Canadian sports history, that Canadians could succeed internationally.
It really made you believe that skiing was something, and it made you believe that you could actually go to the Olympics and dream about winning. I think that allows you to dream big and dream the big dreams that a lot of kids don't dream. Nancy always told me stories about when she was ski racing, and at one point I had a chance to go through many of her old ski clippings and things like that too, and that was really neat to see. I mean, she was really a beautiful woman, and everyone looked up to her, and I've tried to be that way a little bit myself and be a Canadian role model like she was.
There was a lot of things for me that worked out well, the timing. And I came along in ski racing just when it was really at its glory days, and it was just, skiing was just becoming a popular sport. I'm nervous now.
Why?
I'm not going for the pin. I'm going for the green.
Nancy Greene today, teeing off in Calgary at a golf benefit for the Canadian national ski team.
All right.
26 years after retiring from competitive skiing, Nancy Greene remains one of the biggest draws in the Canadian ski world.
Grr, what a waste.
Her legendary status continues because Nancy never left skiing. From super skier, she's transformed herself into super sales rep.
They put in all the infrastructure, all the roads, the new lifts,
So you got
all
essentially
kinds
your
of stuff.
stuff laid out?
Yep, and it's basically, well, it's the first two subdivisions are almost sold out.
While putting in an appearance to help out the ski team, she's also promoting her latest dream, her new home and Canada's newest ski resort, Sun Peaks, British Columbia. There's some light grooming to do, and more than a bit of heavy construction before the snow comes and Sun Peaks opens for the season. Nancy's a major partner in the lodge at the base of the mountain, Nancy Greene's Kahilti Lodge. After traveling and skiing around the world, Nancy's back home in the BC interior. It's no coincidence that Sun Peaks near Kamloops is just north of Nancy's hometown of Rossland, site of the little-known but greatly respected Red Mountain Ski Hill, where Nancy first strapped on a pair of boards. Nancy and her 5 brothers and sisters grew up in this house in the middle of town.
Well, I think it was a typical small town growing up kind of a place, and the only thing that was really different about Rossland was we got a lot of snow in the wintertime and we had a good ski hill. So we were always part of the mountains and part of skiing. And, you know, there were 3 girls and then 3 boys, so we had a pretty big family. And, you know, I have great memories growing up.
To say skiing played an important part in the Greene family life is an understatement. Nancy's mother, Helen, raced in the Canadian Championships back in the 40s. The Red Mountain ski lift was one of the first chairlifts in the country. Nancy's father, Bob, helped build it. 2 of Nancy's brothers still live in town. 1 still lives in the old family house. For younger brother Rick, Nancy always liked being the center of attention.
I don't know how old I was, probably about 8 or 10, and I was going up one of the chairlifts. And Nancy was skiing underneath. I think she was home for the weekend. There was lots of powder snow, and she did a major wipeout, a good yard sale right under the lift. Of course, at dinner that night, first chance I got as soon as she got home, I was giving her a bad time, and her philosophy was there's nothing wrong with falling as long as it's spectacular and lots of people see it.
According to her grade 1 report card, Nancy was a pretty normal little girl. She was overshadowed by her older sister. It was Elizabeth who was the racer in the family.
My sister was, she was my first big rival. You know, she was a lot better than I was when, 13, 14, 15, 16. And she had made the high school ski team when she was in grade 7, and I didn't make it till I was in grade 8. And, she was really, she was winning everything. So my goal became to beat Elizabeth.
Stan Fisher was Nancy and Elizabeth's high school coach.
The whole combination of an older sibling being a good racer and a younger sister who was probably pushing her a little bit too. It was just a perfect combination for someone like Nancy, who was a very strong individual, very intelligent girl.
From the time that Nancy was probably 12 years old, she was very, very determined and really wanted to win.
Nancy worked summers in Judi Grifiths' ski shop.
She was going to go somewhere or else. And she hated like hell to lose, and she didn't lose very often. Yeah, she was a tough kid. Tough, real tough.
Once Nancy started racing, she was hooked. She loved it. In 1959, along with Liz and her mom, Nancy headed east for the junior championships. She was 15 years old.
Nancy in her first big high school race, really, and she fell at the finish and split her pants from front to back. And my wife remembers having to scrounge around to find enough pins to pin her pants together to get her ready for the next run. And I think maybe that was the first time that she beat her older sister. And there was no looking back after that.
Nancy's first taste of Olympic competition came in the 1960 Games in Squaw Valley. She just barely made the team. With her was sister Liz, Nancy Holland, and medal hopeful Ann Hegveit.
Well, I was a rookie. I was 16, and I was really there with my eyes open, looking around and having a good time. I wasn't really focused in on winning. In fact, there was a little quote in the one of the daily sort of journals that came out of the Olympics. I was quoted as saying at the start of the downhill, when I was asked if I was nervous, "Heck no, why should I be nervous? If I crash, no one's heard of me anyway."
Ann Hegveit won the gold in the women's downhill. Ann was Nancy's roommate. Nancy was inspired by the victory, and she thought, if Ann could do it, so could she. The people of Rossland supported Nancy's dream with donations. The money helped Nancy travel to Europe to race. And in 1962, she won her first European trophy. It was an exhilarating time for Nancy. The team skied hard, and oh yes, she partied hard too.
She was the leader of some of those parties, believe me, but that was what made her career such a success, was being able to, to enjoy a lot more than just getting out and running, gunning, going up and down a ski hill.
The 1964 Olympics were in Innsbruck, Austria. Nancy had the self-confidence, but her technique was anything but smooth. It cost her. Nancy's best result in Innsbruck was a 7th place. But help was on the way. Soon after the '64 Olympics, a Canadian ski program started to take shape. The best skiers in the country were invited to train at Notre Dame College in Nelson, BC. It was the beginning of the first national ski team. For Nancy, the timing was perfect.
That was some of the best times I ever had was at Nelson. We worked hard as a group. We studied. We trained. We did everything together. But we were part of the normal university life as well.
They had a trampoline in the gymnasium, I remember, and the one that bounced higher and farther and did more twists than anybody else was Nancy, and she established herself to me right then as not only an incredible athlete, but a great leader, an inspirational, a quietly inspirational type person.
And they fell in love with me, and they drove us everywhere, and they bought us dinner, the whole team.
It was alongside these teammates that Nancy's skiing peaked. The strong bonds that were made back then still exist 3 decades later.
That really did start a national team in a
Downhiller Gerry Rinaldi was a member of that team.
Remember we called ourselves We Try Harder team?
Yeah.
We're number 2.
Yeah,
And then we used to go down and beat the hell out of the Americans.
Judi Leinweber-McIntosh was another member of the team. John Platt was a coach.
And the camaraderie there was something else.
When I look back and I look at it, what we got out of it as a group, it wasn't just the athletic ability and the ski training. There's a cohesiveness in that group that's really special.
1965 was Nancy's breakthrough year. The highlight of her season was the U.S. Nationals at Crystal Mountain, Washington. Those were still primitive days in the sport of alpine skiing. Leather boots and heavy wooden skis. Cumbersome straps. Waxing was more hit and miss than a science.
It's an old wax.
No, they're Norwegian.
Hey, listen, we should get it analyzed and see if we can make something.
We get lined up on that.
For Nancy, after a year of training and racing with the fledgling national team, she was beginning to blossom. She was strong and had developed her own unique style, an aggressive style. She was nicknamed the Tiger.
Number 4, Nancy Greene from Canada is on the course. Nancy Greene from Canada.
You could see it in her eyes. It was an intensity, a glow, almost burning situation you'd see in Nancy's eyes when competition was a thing. And that's what made her what she was.
She is the national downhill champion.
I think what really set Nancy apart and what excited people right away when they watched her, terrified other female competitors and irritated a whole lot of them, was the fact that she was one of the first female skiers to adopt the, point your skis down the hill and go style. And this probably sounds familiar because isn't it what the Crazy Canucks did many years later? But she began to do that, and she was one of the first women ever to do that. She was able to, it was kind of a real balls to the wall, all out style. And yet she had a tremendous amount of control, and the control came from that strength. She did weight shifting. Even today, when you look at that funny old equipment and all the rest of it, if you watch her skiing down the hill, you can see the way she's shifting her weight. And if you sort of shut your eyes slightly and jump ahead 25 years, you can see the same style in skiers today. She was doing it then, and it was a much, much harder thing to do.
71. Nancy Greene on the course, winner of yesterday's slalom, the National Downhill Championships.
Nancy's technique was still rough, but she was starting to do the right things. Her hard-earned success that year gave her the momentum she needed heading into the next season.
By the World Championships in 1966, I was ready to break through. I had already beaten everyone in the world at a few races in the States the spring before, and in my mind, I was going down there to win the World Championships. And it didn't work out that way. I'd been having good training times, and I was leading to about maybe 150 yards from the finish, and there was one final big roll, and I went over the roll, and I just went too fast and flew through the air, and I hit a big ice wall.
Surprisingly, she was not badly hurt. But the crash in Portillo, Chile was a humiliating end to what would have been a championship season. The World Cup ski circuit was born the year after Nancy's crash. It was the beginning of modern-day ski racing. Racers could earn points with top finishes in events throughout the season. At the end of the year, skiers with the most points would be crowned World Cup champ.
And I had gone home and trained harder than I'd ever trained before because I was really determined to beat the French. They had dominated at Portillo. And I wound up winning the first 3 or 4 races and leading in the World Cup, and all kinds of excitement happened. And it was just great. And you know, it couldn't have come at a better time for me.
Jackson Hole, site of the last World Cup event of the 1967 season. Nancy trails her arch-rival, Marielle Goichel, by just a few points. She needed a victory to overtake the French star. Nancy will never forget what it was like as she stood in the starting gate.
And the guys going on the loudspeaker saying, Nancy Greene's in the starting gate. She must be very nervous. If she doesn't win this race, she'll lose the World Cup. And I'm looking around and everybody's staring at me. Oh, God, I'll never forget that.
So you felt a little bit of pressure.
It's almost like I floated away and started to laugh inside. It was like I could see the whole scene and say, this is ridiculous. This isn't the most important moment in my life. There's so many more things. It's just a ski race. And I'm looking and I'm looking at the scene and not being part of it. And then the guy said, all right, you know, race, you're ready. And Marielle said, good luck, may the best one win.
Did she? Yeah.
She said that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, she would.
And I said, thanks, and I almost said, thanks, I will.
Nancy became the first woman champion of the inaugural World Cup. But as good a year as she had in '67, 1968 was going to be even better.
Nancy Greene's gold medal victory when Life and Times returns.
Was on from the very start of the 1968 season. With her strong showing the previous year, Nancy Greene was the one to beat. And it was an Olympic year. Nancy was the focus of the media's attention, but that didn't faze her a bit.
When I grew up in Rossland and I started doing well in ski racing from a pretty early age, going to the Olympics, things like that, I was a big fish in a small pond. And so everybody in my small pond kind of paid attention to me, and I think maybe I got used to it. I think it's, if you grew up in a city, maybe it would be different. But so when I went out and started to be acclaimed, if you like, by a greater pond, I don't think it intimidated me because I was, in a way, I was used to it.
Driving, focused, in some ways very selfish, but all great athletes are, to one extent or another, incredibly selfish, and very focused on what she wanted, and had absolutely no difficulty in just marching straight out and grabbing it by the throat. And that made her different than any other little small town kid who grew up in this country.
But the part of Nancy that has made her most successful as a performer in ski racing, and I think in her later life, is she really is a performer. I think that's what, you know, was her greatest asset as a ski racer, and I think it's her greatest asset in life.
The beginning of the all-important 1968 Olympic season did not get off to a good start for Nancy.
I remember that winter, you know, we hadn't had very good ski training in the fall because the snow was late coming out west. And we got to Europe and we really hadn't had any downhill training. And we went to Bad Gastein, and it was the first time we'd really let our skis run. And that's when I hurt myself, and, you know, it's like 3 weeks before the Olympics, and whammo. So that was kind of a traumatic experience, but in a way it wasn't bad. It took the pressure off me.
The question everyone was asking, could Nancy recover in time for the Olympics? Nancy's first event at the Grenoble Olympics was the downhill. She did not do well.
I tell you, I was devastated. I mean,
Yeah.
I cried.
No,
But I think I came 10th, and I had to go to this. I
Yeah.
had to go to some ceremony where you got a piece of paper for coming 10th.
Oh, right.
And they had these big black goggles on, and I was bawling my eyes out. Oh, it's just
Well,
horrible.
But the disappointment was short-lived. Next up for Nancy was the slalom event. And with perfect form, finesse, and speed, she took second place and the silver medal.
For me, coming second in the slalom was great because I knew I could win the GS. There was no question in my mind. I mean, I just knew.
Nancy's final event of the Olympics was the giant slalom.
You know, when I left the start, I knew that Annie Famose was in the lead, and I knew she had a bad cold, and I was just I was pretty confident.
I remember being down on the course, and Bonnet was there from the French team, and we were up on a little knoll timing, and then he was timing when you came down, and then he just scrubbed his watch, turned around, shook my hand. He didn't even, he was like, you were about a second and a half ahead.
Like, I knew I hadn't made any big mistakes, and I knew that the course really suited me because it was long, and that it had that steep icy pitch going into the finish. So I knew if you had, you know, if you're in good shape and you skied efficiently, that you could do well. And when I went through the finish and I spun around to look at the scoreboard, and my time didn't make any sense at all. It was like 6:6.99 or something like that.
Right.
And I looked at it, and I thought, oh no, they've missed my time. I mean, because my time wasn't where it should have been.
All right.
And what happened was I was so far ahead that it triggered a fail-safe mechanism, and they didn't put the time up. And then all of a sudden, all the numbers at the top of the board started to spin, you know, click, click, and I saw 9CA, and I knew, because it was at the top of the board. Then I remember Billy McKay and Bobby Swan, they jumped over the fence and they ran over, and it was just pandemonium.
When she won the gold medal, we found out early in the morning, and I went to school that day, and some of the teachers were saying, "What are you doing here? Your sister just won a gold medal." And I said, "Well, yeah, but she's in Europe. She's not here. I may as well come to school." Well, if I was going to stay home, I'd pick a day when the skiing was really good.
Olympic competition of ladies giant slalom. First gold medal, Nancy Greene, Canada.
Canada went wild over Nancy's gold medal victory. By the time she returned to Canada, Nancy Greene had become the biggest news in the country. In Toronto, there was a ticker-tape parade down Bay Street and a boisterous rally at the new City Hall. Canadians loved Nancy, and national pride swelled the hearts of all Canadians over the success of this 24-year-old skier. The day Nancy arrived in Vancouver, the city went crazy. Mayor Tom Campbell proclaimed it Nancy Greene Day. She got a true hero's welcome, complete with a downtown parade.
The crowd cheered so loud my ears popped. And I mean, you know, it was almost spooky. I mean, can you imagine? We have this parade. They let all the children in Vancouver out of school. So like, it's just mob.
There was
and
thousands with
and
you.
they have two cars, two convertibles, and I'm in one, and Premier Bennett is sitting in the front seat.
Everyone wanted to be part of Nancy's fame. A street leading up to a local ski hill was named after her. In her last race of the 1968 season, Nancy put the icing on the cake. She won the World Cup title for the second year in a row, along with French skiing star Jean-Claude Killy. She had won everything she'd set out to win. She'd reached her goals. After 9 years of competition, Nancy announced she was retiring.
Retiring is something that everyone has to do sooner or later. It's funny to call it retiring because I don't feel like I feel really like I'm just starting.
She was right. Nancy was leaving ski racing, but the next phase of her ski career was already off to a flying start.
The real key to downhill is speed.
And balance, huh?
You've got to use your head at all times.
Looks like you landed on yours.
Hey, it happens. Here, catch. A Mars bar makes a great break.
I guess the first TV commercial I ever made was for Mars bars. You know, it's funny when you make those commercials, though. You have to open up the wrapper and take the bite and chew it and smile, and then there's somebody there with a bucket and you spit it out and you rinse your mouth out, and then you start again and open up another one, bite it and smile, you know, take 20 and ugh, you know, and at the end of the day there's a whole box full of half-eaten or Mars bars with one bite out of it. Yeah, it's fun. The day after the commercial started to run, people were going into the candy store saying, "Do you have a Mars bar?" And then the next day the salesman would come in and the guy said, "Oh yeah, everybody's asking for these." And so they went from, I don't know, maybe 110th or something in the country to top, and, you know, really, really quickly.
Over the years, Nancy has endorsed many products, most of them skiing related. And it's always been her wish that some of the proceeds would go back to the national ski team.
The fact that she went from athlete to corporate spokesperson to product endorser to businesswoman, which really was quite unusual at the time, is one thing. That's really something that we're not, that's kind of the Michael Jordan era when you think about it, but there was Nancy doing it back in 1968. Not only that, but she was also really the first of our entire generation of athletes to do that.
I often think that I came along at a very, very, almost a special time, because these things were just starting to happen in terms of commercials with athletes and the economic opportunities that were there. And, you know, they hadn't been there 10 years earlier when Anne Hegveit won her gold medal, or 8 years earlier.
Nancy did very, very well with her Olympic medal. I mean, she won way back in 1968, and financially, I think she was probably one of the first amateur athletes in Canada to actually gain from an Olympic medal. And she was very smart business-wise. She's in the sport still. She loves it. She breathes it. She's skiing all the way. And it's amazing what her Olympic medal has done.
She still is the most recognized name, I think, probably in Canadian sport, excluding hockey players, of course.
Back in her hometown of Rossland, another fairy tale turn in the story of Nancy Greene. While serving on Prime Minister Trudeau's Task Force on Sport, Nancy met Al Raine, program director for the national ski team. They married in 1969. In 1971, Al and Nancy had twin sons, Charley and Willy.
Our kids were born, we were living in Montreal. Al was coaching the team, or head coach, program director of the team. And after a couple of years, the family moved out west, and he was still living in Ottawa and commuting. And, you know, those early years were kind of hectic. I was on the road a lot, and we were doing promotions and things, and we couldn't have done it without the help of Al's family. We bought the house right next door to his parents, and, I mean, I would literally say to the boys when they were 3 or 4 years old, "Run over to Grandma's, I'm going to Toronto for a week." And off they'd go, and, you know, it was just that simple.
Naturally, Willy and Charley grew up on skis alongside Mom, but it took years before they realized the role she had played in Canadian sports history.
More and more as we grew up, you sort of start to appreciate and understand what she actually really did, and where, you know, her accomplishments.
And the fact that she was an Olympic champion didn't really enter into the family scene very much. Being famous, it changes some people, but I think you could really say it never changed Mom.
Carving a trail when life and times return.
The 1970s and early 80s was the era of the crazy Canucks. Hunter, Irwin, Reed, Murray, Podborski. They were all devoted followers of Nancy.
Many people feel they need to have role models, men for men, women for women. And in Canada, that doesn't seem to be the case. You know, I think Nancy was just as influential on the young men of the next generation as she was on the young women.
Jim Hunter got started in ski racing after being touched by Nancy.
The real inspiration came in the spring of the year, that year when I had won an award at the Ski Meister Ski Club. And Nancy was there as the presenter and handed out the awards. She came up and got down on one knee, handed me the trophy, looked up at me and put one hand on my side of my face and said, do you think you could be an Olympic champion? I said, yeah. She said, you really believe you could be an Olympic champion? I said, yeah. She took her other hand up and put them both up like this and looked at me and says, then go and do it.
Kerrin Lee-Gartner never having won a World Cup.
At the 1992 Olympics, another Rossland native brought skiing glory to Canada. Kerrin Lee-Gartner won the women's downhill at Albertville.
1:52.67 is the time to beat or to be close to be in medal territory. Lee-Gartner takes the lead!
I have no idea what it is about Rossland, but Red Mountain is just an incredible ski hill, and you learn to become a skier and with a go-for-it attitude, not just a racer. And I think sometimes that's bad right now. Racers just ski in the gates all the time, and they forget just to have fun on the mountains. And that's what you do when you grow up in Rossland. You just enjoy the sport of skiing.
Back at Red Mountain, some of Nancy's youngest protégés come flying down the course. They're kids in the Nancy Greene Ski League. The idea for the league came from husband Al. It's had great success in getting Canadian kids excited about ski racing. Kids from across the country are graduates of Nancy's program.
I did race in the Nancy Greene Ski League, and it's for little skiers. I think when I raced, you could be 5, 6 years old, and it's up to about 10 years old now, and it's across the nation, and there's a lot of great little skiers. A lot of talent has come out of the Nancy Greene Ski League. Karen Percy, Todd Brooker, I think Steve Poborski, Kate Pace. There's too many to name, and I'm afraid to miss some out, but it's amazing. That's just where you start. It's like entering Boy Scouts or Girl Guides. It's one of the steps that you do as a child if you want to ski.
I mean, it always amazes me how much she's still involved in skiing, and just the work that she does. It's not because she's getting paid to do it. I mean, it's not. It's just skiing is still. It means so much to her, and she.
Well, she's gotten so much out of skiing, and she
just feels she could never give enough back. Really.
Yeah.
Together, Nancy and Al have created yet another monument to the Canadian skiing world. This one quite different from the success of the Nancy Greene Ski League. Nancy and Al were pivotal in the development of Whistler. In the early 80s, Whistler was nothing but a sleepy village a few hours north of Vancouver. Today, it's become one of the world's premier ski resorts. Nancy and Al helped Whistler gain international exposure by building the Nancy Greene Olympic Lodge.
And when we moved to Whistler, I mean, there were so many things that were not in order, and Whistler was going, in my estimation, totally in the wrong direction. You know, if it had continued that way, it would have been, single-family chalet sites all over the valley, and no tourism core, no heart. We're really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and have an opportunity to contribute to and develop a plan that was world-class, and we've lived to see it kind of all be built.
During those years, my role with the development of Whistler was really to be a promoter and ambassador, and they would sometimes take me along as the secret weapon. I remember one time we went down to Toronto to meet with some bankers because people were having trouble getting financing on the resort. Different hotels and whatever that were being built were having trouble with the finances, and so they traipsed me into all the bankers, and everybody would ooh and ah and change their tune. And, when I sat there and told these guys in Toronto that Whistler is going to be the best ski resort in North America one day, they actually believed us. And, it happened.
You're from Saskatchewan? Oh, yeah. We're from Blackstrap Mountains?
Yeah, Blackstrap Mountains, yeah.
No, really? You guys are too rowdy for this.
When they had the hotel here in Whistler, she would spend a lot of time entertaining people in the piano lounge, and the comments that you'd get from people that stayed at that hotel were, they were just blown away that somebody this famous and could be so genuine and honest and spend time laughing with them at the table. And
Nancy's Olympic Lodge was a big hit with just about everyone except the International Olympic Committee. It had copyright on the name Olympic and forced her to change it. But that wasn't all that was going to change at Whistler.
We didn't foresee that the Japanese were going to come and buy a lot of Whistler, and in 3 years' time we'd be able to sell the hotel for a handsome profit.
I mean, I've heard people like say, you know, oh, Al and Nancy, they created a monster here. Well, you know, they created something. I mean, they're creators. They love to go and create. They're always busy doing something. The fact of the matter is, it's up to us, the people living in Whistler now, to stop this development monster.
Today, Nancy's Olympic sign is in the garbage dump. Al and Nancy have moved on. Her old hotel is now called the Crystal Lodge. But Willy and Charley still live in Whistler.
How was Austria? Oh, it's good. There's lots of snow. Yeah. Guys are doing pretty good. It was pretty nice to see the snow in Whistler this early.
Charley snowboards. Willy became a racer like his mom. He skied in the 1992 Olympics. Now he coaches the junior national team, watching out for the next Nancy, or someone with the magical 3 Ps.
The three Ps, if you have performance and personality and purity.
She had the package, and that's what she presented. And that's what made her successful. It wasn't just a, hey, I got a gold medal. That wasn't enough. She put together a package that included a certain personality, a certain image, a certain way of speaking. All of that, she put it all together. It'd be interesting to know whether she actually thought about it and did it deliberately. No corporate management agents, no international management group, I think, could have done better for Nancy than she really did for herself.
I get phone calls on a basis.
With Nancy's tremendous popularity, it comes as no surprise that she's been asked to try her hand at politics.
I'm interested in politics, and I follow it, and I have my opinions. But I think we're doing a valuable job for the country, just doing what we're doing here.
I mean, we're obviously strong free enterprisers. We believe in self-responsibility. And the value that people should look after themselves.
No, I think they're like Mom and Dad. They're almost like a perfect team. Because my mom is the personality. She's the charm, and my dad is. I mean, he's very intelligent and is.
Has a lot of drive.
A lot of drive, and but it's always they're always working together, and I mean if he's developing something and she's selling it, and they work so well together.
Willy and Charley discovered that skiing isn't the only thing Nancy likes to do fast.
When we were growing up, she had a little sign in the kitchen that was "Burnt is beautiful."
Yeah, Mom was a good cook. She liked to cook things fast. She liked cooking like, just like racing downhill as fast. Everything was on 9.
There'd be pots flying all over the place, and about 15-20 minutes, probably faster than a microwave.
She could crank out a meal for 10 people in half an hour.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Did you ever drive with her? Oh, that used to be a great experience, I'll tell you. Some of the more exciting moments of my life have been with her behind the wheel, taking you up a hill someplace. Wild woman. Never broke the law, mind you.
Cashing in the gold when Life and Times returns.
It's opening day at Sun Peaks, and as usual, Nancy's running around making things happen.
Can you fax me all the details? And I'll get back to you tomorrow by fax. I'm Nancy.
You are?
Nancy Greene.
Nancy Greene?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Hi.
I'm Hogan.
Yeah. Looking good, looking good.
We had been watching what was happening here ever since it was purchased by Nippon Cable, and we saw what they were starting to put serious money into infrastructure and planning, and we knew there'd be an opportunity, a business opportunity here.
Yep.
My role here at Sun Peaks as director of skiing is basically a promotional PR role, and I don't have to work at any one thing sort of on a regular basis. I help everybody out and go around and look for opportunities to promote Sun Peaks.
We're just rebuilding a downhill, so we'll have a downhill there, not this year, but next year. So there's Gerry Rinaldi's been over homologating.
Now in her 50s, Nancy is still doing what she loves most. She's skiing. She's selling the sport and supporting those who followed her. Since Nancy, Canada has had many skiing champions. Many have won Olympic medals. But Nancy still stands apart as the one to beat. And not only on the ski hill, but in the ability to convert skiing victories into financial success. Still, Nancy is around to help many of these future skiing stars achieve their dreams.
She's been a great role model for me in the way that she deals with the public, and she has helped me phenomenally through the years. I wouldn't be where I am today without Nancy.
Nancy was a singular entity. There never will be another Nancy. And in a way, I think it's hard for the ski racing world to keep looking for that. And though I'm always, and I'm sure she is too, pleased when a young ski racer says, you know, I want to be just like Nancy. If I were Nancy, I think I'd enjoy that. On the other hand, in a way, it might be time to stop that, because I think it makes it, in some respects, a little harder for our ski racers. You know, sometimes you got to get out from under the shadow.
I think the number one thing is it takes a passion for the sport, and I've always had that. I mean, even as a kid, I loved to ski. We skied right to the end of the year, every year when I was growing up, and you know, it's the same now. I never really get tired of it. It's funny. It's skiing's a wonderful sensation. I think as a good skier, you have a different feeling than the average skier. You really swoop and glide, and you know, you can just, you know, especially on this mountain, there's a lot of nice rolls and things, and you can go fast and go over them and let it loose, or you can slow down and do a bunch of turns. It's fun. One of the most important things as an athlete is that you don't give up, and that's that you know, you're a little tenacious. And if you believe in something, you have to stick to it and push it on through. And it takes those kind of people that have the drive and are willing to kind of risk a little bit and believe in themselves and make it happen.